Welcome to HQ Spotlight, folks. I'm Tommy Tran with the crew from the Cover 3, Danny Kanell and Chip Patterson. This can mean only one thing, fellas. Wednesdays, which is college football picks involving every team in the AP Top 25. And even though we don't have the plethora of games that we had last week, 3 top 10 ranked-on-ranked matchups, we just have the one this week, and it's going to be Michigan and Oklahoma. Before we get to the picks, I have some trivia for you guys because this is just the second time that Michigan and Oklahoma are going to play each other. The first time was 1976 in the Orange Bowl. So this year we got Sharon Moore and Brent Venables. Do you guys know the 2 head coaches of those teams back in 1976?
Let him take it.
Chip, you got both?
I got them both. This is Barry Switzer against Bo Schembechler.
Boom, done.
I would have gotten Bo. Barry I probably could come with, but he had it like that.
Yeah, this is Michigan's first non-conference road game since 2018 at Notre Dame, and you guys had it right off the bat. So, again, this is rare to have these 2 programs go at it. Before we get into just the plays here, Danny, I'll start with you. What excites you most about this game?
Oh, I mean, I can't wait. You've got both teams with totally different complexions on the season because of new quarterbacks. I mean, that's been a story in week 1. We saw some flourish. We saw some struggle. And you've got the, I don't know, $10 million, $12 million, depends on who you believe, at Michigan, quarterback in Bryce Underwood, his first big start on the road, a place we saw a young quarterback struggle in week 1. And then on the flip side, John Mateer. I thought John Mateer was the best quarterback available in the transfer portal this past offseason. Comes to Oklahoma with his offensive coordinator. He has a big day in their debut. I know the competition wasn't great for either one of these teams, but so far, for both of them, you got what you paid for, and you got what you were hoping for. So for me, it's about the quarterbacks in this one.
What about you, Chip?
Yeah, it's going to be about Brent Venables, Oklahoma, playing at home, under the lights, all of the pressure that goes into the season. The bet, not just on John Mateer, but bringing in Ben Arbuckle after just an absolute mess of an offensive staff 1 year ago. We know that Brent Venables has got his hands on the defense. Well, that defense will be responsible for trying to frustrate and confuse Bryce Underwood. And all of this as Brent Venables, without a doubt, is under immense amount of job pressure to deliver results. This moment, this night in Norman, could go a long way towards sort of building that momentum and positivity all around this program as they prepare for SEC play.
There's one other interesting aspect to this game.
What's
the
that?
Big Ten versus the SEC. With the Big Ten already 1-0 in that big game, the Ohio State win over Texas. If Michigan goes into Norman and gets this win, watch out for Big Ten fans saying we are the best conference in college football, and it would be hard to argue against if you had the last 2 national championships and you started off that strong early this season. That could be a big feather in their hat.
It's interesting because you have the macro conference look, and the micro just seems, as Chip pointed out, that Brent Venables needs this a little more. Oklahoma maybe needs this a little bit more. And you're going to lay the 5.5 here, Chip, in this game?
Yeah, 100%. Number one, there's the football aspect of Bryce Underwood going up against a defensive line, anchored by R. Mason Thomas, but really led by Brent Venables, that I think is one of the best defensive fronts in the SEC, and therefore one of the better groups in the entire country. But also, I'm going to be looking at the other side of the ball, where Michigan's defense, I think very quietly, has taken a slight step back from that championship form that we saw in 2023 and 2024. Heck, maybe all the way back to 2022. New Mexico has a very unique offense, very difficult to prepare for and difficult to defend, but they were able to go and put 17 points on the board, play a little ball control. And so if John Mateer can go out there and get a little bit better protection up front, I think Oklahoma might be able to win this thing without too much of a sweat, because Michigan, again, so much focus on Bryce Underwood. I wonder if the other side of the ball might be the group that lets him down.
True freshman first road start. Again, at home in Ann Arbor against the Lobos. Danny, I don't know if you have a lean on the spread, but you certainly like the total, the under in this game.
Yeah, it's been creeping away. I think it's 3.5, then it's been up to 5.5 now. Oklahoma's the home favorite. I might take those points on the road because I think this game is going to come down to the wire. I think it's an ugly, defensive game. Bryce Underwood's first road game, but this is John Mateer's first big game against better competition. That's been the one question mark that he still hasn't answered. I know it was impressive in week 1, but still, that was an FCS opponent that he was going against. Now he's got to go against Wink Martindale, who's one of the better defensive coordinators in the game, and they did not run the ball well. If they're one-dimensional against Michigan, I do think that could put John Mateer in a bind somewhat. I don't think they're just going to be lighting him up through the air. And on the flip side, Brent Venables, one of the best defensive minds in the game for the past 20, 25 years, now is the defensive play caller for the Oklahoma Sooners. I would imagine he's going to have a game plan to slow down Bryce Underwood. And Sherrone Moore, I don't think he wants at all for Bryce Underwood to have to go in there and throw the ball around. He wants to run Justice Haynes, and he is not afraid to stay committed to the run. He's more than comfortable to see 2 and 3 plays and a pile of dust and kind of muck this game up, work that time of possession. I think in a perfect world, Bryce Underwood throws it between 18 and 22 times. It's very limited action, and they are just grinding away. And I think they'll protect him, similar to what you saw Ohio State do against Texas at home. Julian Sayin didn't light the world on fire. They kept him out of harm's way, didn't ask him to do a whole lot. I think that'll be a very similar game plan for Michigan, and this one is limit Bryce Underwood's exposure in the pass game. I think you'll see him run the ball a little bit more, and boy, I think Wink Martindale is going to be able to present some challenges for John Mateer in that Oklahoma offense. So I think this is a lower scoring game out there, and I like Michigan with the points if I was leaning one way or another,
okay.
But I do think Oklahoma could be really good.
You wonder what emotions, if any, for Coach Moore coming back to Norman. I know Brent Venables have been talking about having him back in the, mid to late aughts for Moore there with OU. But again, that's a 7:30 matchup. The rest of the way here on this show, we're going to go AP top 25 teams in chronological order, of course, with Saturday noon starts. And that includes the Cy-Hawk game, guys, that we have between Iowa and Iowa State. Now, if you're a Hawkeye fan or talking about Chris Hassel, look away, because the last 9 games against ranked teams, they have not covered the number with the exception of 1 push. Now, some spreads have been closer than others. This is a close game where Iowa's catching 2.5. Iowa State won at Iowa last season, but Iowa's won 6 straight visits to Ames. Chip, first word on this particular game, this edition of the Cy-Hawk game.
Oh my God, Iowa's offense has to be better, right? I mean, it just has to. Mark Gronowski, all of the promise, all of the excitement. Kirk Ferentz sitting with us with a smile on his face, admitting that it's been a while since he's felt this confident about the quarterback position, and yet we just didn't get to see a lot. Now, did we not see a lot because Iowa didn't want to show a lot going up against an FCS opponent with this rivalry game on deck? Perhaps, but consider me a little bit of a believer here that they were playing coy, sandbagging a little bit to prepare for this game. I think that what we saw from Iowa's offense in year 1 under Tim Lester a year ago was a dynamic quarterback play, pushing the ball down the field for 300 yards a game. Absolutely not. But they generated explosive plays through the run game with Caleb Johnson. And I do think that that run game is still going to be effective and was effective, even if it was more of a committee approach. I've seen Iowa State's defense now. We've got 2 games of evidence, and it shows that while they're still committed to that 3-3 stack and going about things the way they have for all those years under Matt Campbell, they are allowing a few explosive plays. We saw Kansas State climb back into the game that way. So at a super, super low team total of 19.5, I'm going to say that they were playing possum, as they say in week 1, and we see Iowa's offense get to the incredible number of 20.
Okay, DK, Road
Not
Dogs?
asking a whole lot. So Chris Hassel may not have liked some of that, but I think he's going to like this pick. I'm going to take the Iowa Hawkeyes to win the game. Give me the 2.5 if I can take them. They're usually lower scoring. We've seen some 1-point games, so if you're a little bit tentative there and don't want to go for the outright win, take the 2.5 points. But Chip, I think, said it best. Tim Lester, that offensive coordinator for Iowa, Mark Gronowski, they did not expose at all. I think it was 8 of 15 for about 45 yards passing. I don't think they wanted to use him very much. Get in, get out, get the comfortable win, because he did miss spring coming off a major injury and a surgery this offseason. They did find a 100-yard back, albeit a freshman who had to come to the rise to the occasion because of injuries. And I do like Rocco Becht. I like Iowa State a lot in this matchup, but I'm going to trust that Mark Gronowski, somebody I've been pounding the table for all offseason. The cover 3 guys were giving me such a hard time. Well, what happened to him? Where is he? I think he makes his big debut for the Hawkeyes here with a big road win in the Cy-Hawk game.
All right, the rivalry games have been under 17-3 the last 20 matchups, which you mentioned, Tim Lester. This total would probably be in the 30s if not for him. He has really elevated that program, scoring a little bit more points than what we're used to seeing. All right, let's get to number 11, Illinois, short road favorites at Duke. It's inside a field goal here. Danny, there are some people that still have some reservations about Illinois. Do you coming to this game, and what do you like about the player?
Yeah, tentatively. I mean, you got to remember, we are a Luke Altmaier podcast at the Cover 3 crew. After getting to sit with him, so impressed with what he brings to the table, leadership, the intangibles, and also makes really good decisions with the football. The big concern that I think a lot of people had was how are they going to replace Pat Bryant and Zachariah Franklin? And maybe it wasn't one receiver. They had 4 different receivers go over 50 yards receiving. So I trust him on the road to get it done. I also think Brett Bielema is going to rely a heavy bit on the run game, try to take the pressure off of his defense. And one other matchup to keep an eye on, Duke has a freshman at tackle who's in over his head just a little bit. And Gabe Backus is a game wrecker for Illinois' defense. Darian Mensah looked pretty good late in the game against Elon, but I think he could be running around a little bit for his life to some extent. And it could provide some big plays. But ultimately, I think Illinois has too much power, too much weight behind them, with a little bit of advantages on the offensive and defensive line. So I'll say they get the road win and cover.
So, Chip, that sounds like a bit of a recipe for an under of the 49.5 or 50 if you can find it.
Yep, that's we're going to be looking there, 49.5, 50, under 7 touchdowns, because the approach that Brett Bielema is going to take to go into a building where, I mean, don't get it twisted. Duke, I've mentioned this to Danny before, a 4th-year student at Duke has seen 26 wins across the last 3 seasons. They've rushed the field after multiple top 25 upsets, and they want to take the crowd out of the game. And I think that the way that you do that is by playing terrific defense up front and by running the daggum football behind your offensive line that brings back all those starts and all that experience with J.C. Davis leading the way. And so seeing Luke Altmaier go and light it up, I don't think that's the way you beat this Duke team. I think Duke is stronger on the back end of the defense and the secondary than they necessarily are on the front end of the defense, or the defensive line and the linebacker position. And against Elon, they were having some trouble with some of the misdirection quarterback run that we saw from the Phoenix. So for Illinois, with the game plan to make sure that you keep a 0 in the loss column, that's going to be running the football, taking the air out of the stadium, and all that to me leads to more of an under. I will say this could get dangerous because Duke is a team that plays with tempo, and I do believe that Darian Mensah is very good. Maybe a live wagering opportunity once we get the scripted plays out of the way, but ultimately my notion is that this is still a game that's lower scoring, so I'll go under.
Okay, Illinois and the under for the guys at the cover 3. Then we have Baylor and SMU. We saw Baylor lose to Auburn in Waco last week, and SMU continuing to try to plod along here early on in the season. What's the play for you here, DK?
So I got a little bit of a trend. I know I gave out an under earlier in the show, but this week I think you're going to see a big jump in offensive production. Tom Fornelli shared with the stat, I think the unders in week 1 were 83 and 61 against the number. Low scoring, a lot of low scoring games as offenses are trying to figure things out. Well, not for these two teams. And across the board, I think you see more production as offenses get more comfortable to live game action. I think this could be a good old-fashioned shootout. And the last time we're going to see the battle for the iron skillet, Sawyer Robertson, this isn't the skillet, that's in a couple weeks. But Sawyer Robertson, almost 400 yards against Auburn's defense. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And Kevin Jennings, in his own right, is a special quarterback who I think he can put up big numbers. R.J. Maryland, one of his favorite targets, is going to be back out there. The defenses, I think, could be on their heels all night long. I think this is a little bit back and forth, sort of a track meet. I know the number's high, but I'm not scared of it. I'll take the over 65.5.
You scared of that, Chip?
Nah, but I'm gonna stick with that word that I used in the last description when I said script, because maybe it is my own nightmares from Kenan Memorial Stadium on Monday night, But I have seen all across week one, a lot of offenses look great on that first drive and in the first quarter, and then things start to settle in once adjustments are made. Both of these offenses, I do agree, are terrific. I just was looking, and I saw a first quarter total of slightly under 2 touchdowns. I mean, come on now. We are going to see 2 touchdowns. We might see 3 scores in this first quarter. So I'm going to go first quarter over 13.5. I say either both teams find pay dirt or one team is up 14-0 after 15 minutes.
All right, good first block, guys. We got to hit a break here on HQ Spotlight, but when we come back, the number 2 team in the country at home, Penn State, another 40-plus point spread against the G5 school, and will Texas cover against my Spartans in Austin? All right, welcome back to the show. Let's talk about the number 2 team in the country playing another team that they're favored by 40 or more points. Penn State laying the big number against FIU here. And the backdoor against Nevada came back to bite me in the butt there last week, Chip. But what about this week?
Yeah, that's what we might need here, Tommy, because I'm looking at this FIU program, and I will say that some of this is a big picture buy for Willie Simmons. I think he did a great job at FAMU. I think that when he was an assistant down the road for me here at Duke, just really impressed with the kind of coach that he is and what he can do with this FIU program. For that reason, I just don't think that he's going to look at this opportunity as the reason to, take the check and get out of there. I'm expecting 60 minutes of compete. So, whether it is a Penn State mistake or an FIU backdoor, there are a lot of different ways. We're going to go Panthers team total over 6.5.
I hope you're right. I mean, I would love to see them double that total because I'm going to tackle the game total. I'm going over here because of what you said. I think FIU is one of those teams that will not go away. Tommy, you mentioned the backdoor cover last week. I want to see this game high scoring, and I still believe that Drew Aller and that offense are still getting things going. I think they can score at will. Wouldn't be surprised if they come close to that 54.5 on their own, but I do think FIU will have 4 quarters of fight, even late in the game, trying to get some of their guys work against some backups for Penn State. Wouldn't be surprised to see a score or 2 late. So I'm going to go over the whole game.
Okay. Teams have only played once before. Penn State 59-0 back in 2007. Let's get to my Spartans catching 36.5 against Texas, was just lost in Columbus to Ohio State with a total at 51 and a hook. Now, you guys are both in a position to cash both bets. And, Chip, you always have the exotics and team totals here. My Spartans aren't going to score enough points. They're not going to get to double digits, you think?
I'll give him a touchdown. But for all of the Arch Manning discussion, one thing that has gone overlooked is what that defense did, because Jeremiah Smith was not a factor in that game. And Carnell Tate had to make an incredible grab to be able to pull in that touchdown catch. And yeah, okay, they got pushed around a little bit by one of the best offensive lines in the country on that C.J. Donaldson touchdown run, but that was it. Texas's defense has All-Americans at every single level. They've got so much size and talent and athleticism. I just think that Texas was, for everything that you wanted them to be, good enough to win in Columbus in week 1. I think that's going to be the standard for this group. I think they are going to hold a lot of teams way, way under their season averages. And so for San Jose State, a team that was only able to muster just a couple of scores against Central Michigan, I think 7's going to be all they're going to get against the Longhorns. I will go on this side a team total under 7.5.
I might be surprised if they get 7, unless it's an Arch Manning pick 6 early, and then there's all-out panic for the Texas Longhorns. I think the most predictable thing that happened in week 1 was Arch Manning was going to struggle, and even more so, the overreactions. People are ready. The sky is falling. Arch Manning is overrated. I'm not buying any of it. I thought it was completely normal. Now you know what I think you're going to expect? Sark to build up his confidence. You know what does wonders for quarterbacks? Throwing for about 350 yards and 5 touchdown passes. I think he lets Arch cook in this window, where even in the game, there were some opportunities. He missed some passes. Again, completely normal. Not this one. And it was such a tight game. They had to play it a little bit close to the vest. They want kind of dial back some of the shot plays because they were in it. We saw them late in the game when it opened up. The pass game started to look a lot better. I think the next 3 weeks, the priority is for Sark to get Arch comfortable, to get his confidence back, and I don't think there's much better things to ask for than an opponent like San Jose State coming in. I think you even leave Arch in there maybe a little bit longer than you would if you had won that game. I think this is an all-out assault for Texas over San Jose State.
Bounce back for them. Longhorns 5-1 against the number in their last 6 as a 20-point favorite or more, which is what they are here in this spot. All right, let's get to the newly ranked 14th team in the country, the Florida State Seminoles here taking on East Texas A&M. And because we're in week 2, it is Wednesday, and a handful of teams taking on FCS teams. So lines aren't available in terms of what we're talking about right now. But we're asking you guys score predictions. DK, you gave us a pretty good one for this game. What would that be?
Oh, it's easy. It's 1,000,000,000. This Florida State team is back. They have announced themselves returning to the top of the college football world. And did anybody else notice what Mike Norvell said after this game? He was irritated they didn't win by more against Alabama because he knows this team has more left in it, offensively and defensively. Both sides play great. The one area where I think they're going to try to develop is Tommy Castellanos, who, yes, I know he played great, but the numbers weren't exactly something that jumped off the board. Only 9 completions, around 150 yards. Running the football, he was very efficient as well. This is one where I think they air it out. They start working on his capability as a passer, get him more continuity with Squirrel White and Deuce Robinson on the outside. And I think this team's confidence and mojo is back. I think they want to put an emphatic statement on that last Alabama game. We saw Brian McFadden, our colleague here, talking to the team about don't smell the perfume, and if you drink it, it's poison. They are as focused as I've seen them. I think they still are reminded about what happened last year. They want to prove to everybody it's not a fluke. I think this is an all-out blowout.
Yeah, let's maybe, it might take a little while to warm up, okay? You know how sometimes you got to go for a workout after that big night out just to get a little sweat?
Oh, yeah,
maybe
Sunday morning. That was me.
10 minutes or so. Like, I think this might be a little sluggish out the gate. Maybe you were feeling yourselves a little. So, hey, Tommy, I'm going 45-3. Is it still a 42-point win? Absolutely. Florida State proved a lot to me. I am a believer that this is a real threat to the Clemsons and the Miamis there in the ACC. But I just think the human nature of the success of what was a cathartic win for everybody, fans, staff, and certainly players who were a part of last year's struggles, I would say that it would not surprise me if it takes a little while to get into the flow of the game here in week 2.
So you guys have a combined Florida State $1,045,000,000 Just making sure that's on the record there for a game that we don't have a spread yet. We do have a line here with Kennesaw State catching 35.5 at 23rd ranked Indiana. Now, you guys both picked ODU in the points last week, Chip. So what are we thinking about the team in Bloomington this week again?
I'm going to go with the under. I'm a little bit concerned about Indiana's ability to finish drives, because if you don't look at the score and you just look at the yards and you just look at the efficiency, the running, the passing, and you're thinking like, wow, the Hoosiers, they're just the same old Hoosiers, just absolutely running through defenses like a hot knife through butter. But yet it was not reflected. You had some missed field goals there. You had to go for field goals when you should have had touchdowns. And I'm ready to say maybe that gets corrected. A lot of coaches will tell you the improvements from week 1 to week 2 are big, but maybe also Curtis Rourke is just a little bit further ahead than where Fernando Mendoza is. And while the NFL scouts are going crazy, it might take a little while for him to be able to get settled in Mike Shanahan's offense. So now I'm going to go with an under. And again, it is because Kennesaw looked woeful on offense against Wake Forest, but also because Indiana left points on the field with their inability to punch good drives into the end zone. If that's something that is an issue, then we're going to really start to adjust our expectations for Indiana when they play better opponents. Here, the only value is on the total.
I think there's value on going back to the well. I know it burned us last week because we had the philosophy Indiana blows out the lesser opponents. I think this is one of those big week 1 to week 2. I might have got a little bit out ahead of my skis saying Fernando Mendoza is going to step in there and just pick up where Curtis Work left off. Now that he's kind of got that under his belt, I think they play much better. I think Kennesaw State is not quite the opponent that Old Dominion was. And Kirk Cignetti, I know he wants to get some of those style points when he can get them. Schedule a little bit tougher this year, so I'm going to go back to the well. But I promise you, if they don't cover this one, I'm getting away from it next week. Because guess what? They have another blowout next week. But I'm going to try it one more time and back the Hoosiers and lay the big number.
All right, Indiana looking to get a program record 13 straight wins against unranked opponents this weekend. Time to hit another break here on HQ Spotlight. We'll continue to round out the noon slate, get into that 3:30 window, which includes number 1 Ohio State hosting Grambling at the Shoe after beating Texas. Welcome back to the show, folks. Tommy, Danny, and Chip with you. Let's get to Kent State catching 48.5 against Texas Tech Saturday at noon game. Baron Morton, I don't know how much we'll see of him, Chip, here, but you and Danny want to lay the points here with the Red Raiders?
Yeah, because Will Hammond can score touchdowns too, Tommy. I mean, this is Kent State. This is number 136 and the CBS Sports 136, the dead last ranked team in the FBS. I just think this could get really, really ugly. They struggled to cover. Oh, they did not cover against Merrimack. They struggled to beat Merrimack. So, yeah, we're going to take Texas Tech, which played an FCS team last year and is going to be beating by 50 points a team that is of FCS quality. I'll lay them with the Red Raiders.
I hate these big numbers. We were talking during the break, like these massive numbers. This is probably one that I'm not that scared of. They could basically call their number. They could call their shot. I don't know if Joey McGuire is paying attention to the lines at all, but this team is just too good. Kent State is struggling. I was really impressed with Texas Tech week 1. Looking sharp. I know it was an FCS opponent. That wasn't always the case across the country. Some teams sputtered early. They look good from start to finish. I would expect that to continue against one of the worst teams in the country, as you mentioned.
Yeah, that was a fun cover 3 play with Merrimack covering. You guys were all hyped up about that one. All right, Utah State catching 31.5 at Texas A&M with a total at 54.5. You guys both hit your plays last week with Texas A&M in the UTSA game as well. So right now, though, opposite ends of this game. Chip, you go ahead and go first.
Yeah, give me Broncos' big, beefy boys. Bronco Mendenhall, a good ATS darling of ours at multiple stops. And he's taken over a Utah State squad that is not going to be contending for a Mountain West title. But they are, I think, at a level where they can go into this game and score enough points to stay within the number. Because while Marcel Reed did have 4 touchdowns, and while Casey Concepcion, their new addition out of the transfer portal, had a punt return touchdown as well as a touchdown reception, we also saw UTSA move the ball a little bit. Again, I think UTSA has a better offense than Utah State does, but this is a massive number as Texas A&M has who? Notre Dame on deck next. And so I think it was good for Texas A&M to go out there and really test themselves in week 1. Maybe we see a little bit more of a conservative approach. And again, Utah State might only need to get us 10, 13, or 14 points to stay inside this number.
Boy, I don't know if they get those. Mike Elko may be a little bit irritated that his defense was a little bit leaky against UTSA. I do think Jeff Traylor's squad is pretty good, and I do think this is one where the Texas A&M defense comes back to the forefront, and I trust Marcel Reed and that offense to put up big numbers against a completely overmatched Utah State squad, so I'll lay them with the Aggies.
Grambling and Ohio State from the Shoe. Again, any chance of a letdown here, Danny? What do you think? This could be a game that we see a spread in the 40s or 50s.
No, I don't think so. I think Ohio State feels pretty dialed in. Again, one where we talked about earlier in the show, I thought Julian Sayin was protected because they didn't want to expose him too much. The way their defense was playing against Texas Longhorns and Arch Manning, I think this is one where you try to find, get Julian Sayin his confidence up. And I never thought I would be saying this, but Jeremiah Smith, they need to get his confidence up after a couple very uncharacteristic drops early in that game against Texas. I think they want to get him going. I think they want to get the entire offense going more. So I think this is a completely lopsided affair, and I do think you'll see that Ohio State offense kind of coming back to form where we see them putting up some pretty big numbers.
Yeah, put me down for 52-0, Tommy. I think we are dealing with the silver bullets. We are dealing with one of the best defenses in the entire country. I don't know how many points are going to be scored on this group all season long. So, yeah, Grambling's a shutout. And I like Danny's call there. Now is the time that you let Julian Sayin get out there and really take some chances, push it down the field.
Okay, no trouble for Ohio State after that win against Texas in Columbus. We'll hit a break here on HQ Spotlight. When we come back, we'll talk about the Oregon Ducks. Someone gave them a first-place vote this week. 4 touchdown favorites over Oklahoma State in the Big Ten on CBS Game of the Week. Welcome back to the Pick Show. All that music's there, folks. 3:30 Eastern, big time, presented by Home Depot. Oklahoma State at number 6, Oregon on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus. Mike Gundy speculating Monday on his radio show Oregon spending $40 million on players for its roster a season ago, saying the Cowboys had only spent $7 million in NIL money over the past 3 seasons. Well, here's Dan Lanning on Mike Gundy.
I got a ton of respect for Coach Gundy. Ultimately, how blessed are we to be in a place that's invested in winning? If you want to be a top 10 team in college football, you better be invested in winning. And we spend to win. Some people save to have an excuse for why they don't, right? And ultimately, he's a great coach. They've done an unbelievable job, but I want to be a team that's competing at the highest level. And we're really fortunate to be in that situation. So I can't speak on their situation. I have no idea, what they got in their pockets over there. I'm sure UT Martin maybe didn't have as much as them last week, and they played. So we'll let it play out.
Oh, boy.
Well, Danny, what did you make of those comments?
Oh, well, let it play out. You know what that means. We're going to try to absolutely boat race you in this game. Man, I love Mike Gundy, and I think everybody respects the job that he's done. But after one of his worst seasons since his first year last year, I don't know if things are looking that much better. And and Mike Gundy's right. They don't have the resources to go get the players that Oregon has. But why would you give them any bulletin board material whatsoever? You had Dante Moore come out and look the part in week 1. They started last year so slow, which is kind of crazy because they had a veteran in Dylan Gabriel almost come out there struggle against Idaho State. They struggle against Boise State. It looks like they are super dialed this year. Oklahoma State has issues now of its own. Haas Haney, the quarterback that was playing last week, he gets hurt. So now they're back to Zane Flores. I just think this is going to be an uphill battle. I'll lay them with Oregon, sort of that emphatic, oh, really? You want to say something? We'll show you what money buys you type of moments out there. I would love to be wrong as a company man and see those ratings off the chart and getting those alerts in your Paramount Plus app saying, hey, there could be an upset in the making. Unfortunately, I think Oregon absolutely rolls.
Or you have our Jenny Dell have to cultivate some stories that we
Yes.
have, which maybe includes the Dan Lanning comments there. So, again, you're going to have to clear 4 touchdowns, Chip. And this was a game that opened at 23.5 at some books here, ballooned all the way up. Some buyback because of the hook and the number here, but you want to lay it just like DK is.
Yeah. Because we want you to be dialed in to Paramount Plus for all 4 quarters. I mean, come on now. We got to be dialed in, make sure we cover all these. No, seriously. So sometimes you cannot take something away from the statistics of an FCS game. But what I like to do is I like to go back and I like to hear the words that are being said, because Montana State is a program that was the national runner-up 1 year ago, 15 wins on the season. And their head coach comes from the Craig Bowl tree, which means he was at North Dakota State and Wyoming. The guy knows good football. He's going to call it the way he sees it. And he said that his impression of what he saw from this Oregon team in terms of their overall speed, strength, and athleticism was unlike anything that he had seen. And that speaks to what we had, gotten a little bit of buzz about regarding the Ducks, because we don't have a lot of those high-profile, top-level names other than maybe a Dante Moore, maybe a Mateo Uyunglele. But overall, we know that Dan Lanning has been recruiting at a high level since he got to Eugene. We were just wondering whether or not he was going to have the player development side added. I kind of think the Ducks are overlooked, underrated, and might be a war machine. So I'm laying all these points with Oregon until I'm proven otherwise.
These two programs don't play each other very often. Just the second meeting. Oregon won the 08 Holiday Bowl back then. All right, let's get to Ole Miss in Kentucky, where Ole Miss is laying 10.5. Now, we have a Kentucky trend, which may or may not influence your selection. Last 6 games against ranked teams, have they covered? Oh, yes, they have. And even 2 of those games have been outright wins. Kentucky's not won consecutive meetings, though, against Ole Miss since 1978 and 79. Once again, that number's 10.5. This one in Lexington, Kentucky. And Chip Patterson saying, nope, we're going to buck that trend. Ole Miss, 10.5. We're going to lay it with Lane Kiffin's kids.
Yeah, I mean, not all of those teams that they've gone up against had their college football playoff hopes spoiled by having Kentucky come in and just like ruin the game in front of your home fans. I mean, Kentucky turned that into an absolute rock fight last season. And with so much roster turnover there with the Wildcats, the 4-8 team that they tried to make even better, I just don't know if they've got the carryover to be able to do that again. Lane Kiffin, on the other hand, big time revenge factor. So I don't think that, Ole Miss for most of the game was okay before they absolutely poured it on late. 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter of their win against Georgia State. This is an Ole Miss team that is very much looking to run it up. And against a Kentucky team that ruined their season a year ago, oh yeah, you can bet they're going to be looking to run it up again.
Man, I almost want to switch my pick because I think he's so right. The number, I thought it would be closer to 2 touchdowns, honestly, because of that revenge factor. But I'm going to go for the total. I told you guys that, this week, I think you see offenses start to get things figured out. I think it could be an uphill battle for Zach Calzada and company. And I do think Mark Stoops wants to suck the life out of this game, just like he did in Oxford last year. It was one of the uglier games all season. But I do think Ole Miss will get off to a stronger start this year. And if there is any chance for late touchdowns to try to push this one over that 10.5, I think Lane Kiffin takes it. But 50.5, pretty low number here. I think Zach Calzada and you see Kentucky maybe put up some points, maybe 10, maybe 14. But ultimately, I think if there's an opportunity for a late touchdown to put it over both of us, one for Chip to get the cover, me to get the over, I think Lane Kiffin is going to take that opportunity. And Austin Simmons has looked the part so far. I think he gets off to a little bit of a faster start in this game. So I'm going to take the over.
Yep, to Chip's point, there were 17.5-point favorites at home last year, laying the 10.5, and then that CFP blemish was tough there for Lane Kiffin. All right, South Florida catching 17.5 against Florida. Now, USF coming up against that big win against Boise State in Tampa, and then we had LIU, the Long Island Sharks, against the Gators here. So, Danny, you want to go the under. So you've been a lot of overs this week, but this is an under for you here at 55.5.
No.
You're going to go over.
This is over.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. Give me those points. And I kind of, where's Jacqueline? Where's Jacqueline at?
Do we have her?
I kind of want to take a little upset special on board here just to get her a little bit irritated. But I do think this is going to be a test that the Gators better be ready for. We know about their schedule, but the one team that people have overlooked is the South Florida Bulls, who I thought had one of the best wins in week 1, getting it done 34-7 against Boise State, one of the best teams from the group of 5. Now they've got an opportunity to impress. I think even score-wise, if they have a chance to put up a touchdown late, just to make the scoreboard look respectable when we start comparing resumes, I think they'll do it. The flip side, Florida looked like the real deal. I mean, one of the best catches in the weekend came from their young wide receiver. DJ Lagway loves to hit the big pass over the top. And good news for that Florida offense, because South Florida gave up 8 big plays to Boise State and Maddox Matson last week. So I think this one, Florida handles their business. They put up a ton of points. And I think South Florida, Byron Brown is a difference maker. He's physical as a runner. He likes to take some deep shots down the field too. So I think this one is a little bit higher scoring.
Danny, if we win, should we rush the field? What do you think?
Not yet. No, it's too early for that. And I mean, if you guys ever played a quality opponent like Alabama, who's ruled the college football world for the last 15, 20 years,
have you seen our schedule?
Then go ahead. Like, if you guys have to win like that, then do it. But I know you guys haven't had many good wins recently, so you haven't had that chance.
FSU would crumble under Florida's schedule that we have following USF, but it's fine. I know that they put me in this box so that I can, talk back and forth with Danny, but look at that. LSU, Miami, Texas A&M. Honestly, if we beat any of them as the rankings stand right now, we should not rush the field because they're not the #1 team in the country, but I digress. I've seen Byron Brown's highlight reel and what he can do with his legs. I saw it against Boise State. It is a little concerning, and I had Lige Douzable in here telling me, hey, Jack, watch out for South Florida. Watch out. You're underestimating them. I get it. I hear you. And I'm aware, but I think Florida wins and covers all day.
Okay, Chip, are you in line with Jacqueline here? Would covering all day?
Yeah, absolutely. Jacqueline and I do not agree at all when it comes to the ice, but we are in lockstep here. Don't take the bait because USF was boom or bust against Boise State. And I just don't think that Florida's defense is going to allow those same kind of breakdowns that we saw from the Broncos playing at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time in Tampa. I think that this Florida defense, after being so poor at the beginning of last season, really turned a corner. You got different dudes, different athletes there. Now that they've solidified their coaching, I just think it's going to be very, very difficult for the Bulls to have that kind of success. And like Danny said, you know, the USF defense, they did a great job of stepping up when their backs were against the wall and limiting what Boise State was able to do even after they hit their explosive plays. But DJ Lagway and the athletes that you've got for the Gators, I think, are going to be too much to handle. I'm going with Florida, and I will lay the points even with 17 and a hook.
Gators trying to go 2-0 for the first time since 2021, which was Dan Mullen's last year there in Gainesville. Time to hit another break here on HQ Spotlight. Georgia has not covered as a 30 or better favorite in its last 9 games. Will that change against FCS Austin Peay this weekend? All right, we got a couple more segments left to go here in the show, but let's talk about Georgia. I teased this before the break. Last 9 games as a 30-point favorite or better, and I mean, that Marshall one stings because I laid the 38 and a half.
Me too.
45-7, DK. By the hook. Austin Peay comes to town between the hedges Saturday, 3:30 Eastern. So again, with these FCS schools, middle of the week, no spread yet, but we anticipate this could be anywhere in the 40s, okay? Maybe even 50 when it's all said and done. So Chip, when you take a look at it, what's the play for you?
I mean, the under again, like the winning pick last week with Georgia, because when Kirby is a favorite of 38 points or more, we're just trying to get a good workout here, boys. You know, I just want to make sure everybody gets a chance to play, say hi to their families in the stands between the hedges. I'll go 42-3 here. I think that we see something very similar with a little bit less scoring from the FCS side.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. I had 49-3. I think this is a good game for Georgia. I thought Gunnar Stockton looked really good. Zachariah Branch, the transfer who came in from USC, it looks like they're really finding a spot to implement into this offense as a big playmaker. Gunnar Stockton with his legs, too, was pretty impressive as well. But I think this is one of those spot-your-number type games, and then you start like kind of resting your starters in the second half so you can get them geared up for the rest of the season. But I think Georgia's going to roll clearly.
Rest of the season and the week after with Tennessee, which, by the way, number 22 Tennessee, East Tennessee comes to town Saturday, 3:30 there at Neyland. Again, score prediction. We saw the Joey Aguilar experience in Atlanta against Syracuse there. Danny, thoughts on the Vols? They look like they're kind of revving it up like they used to there.
Yeah, I didn't give a score for this one, but I thought there were several things that were really impressive. One, Joey Aguilar, as you mentioned, 3 touchdowns. He looked completely comfortable in this system. I will say last year, Nico against NC State had a massive game early in the season. So can you continue to get that level of play, I think, is another question mark. But the defense, for me, they showed up and played really well against Syracuse, who did try to throw the ball somewhat, didn't have much success. I think there's room for improvement there. But I think this Tennessee team is just going to completely overpower here.
100% with you, DK. I gave 56-7. You mentioned Nico's performance in non-conference play last season. That's just the way that this team functions. They're just going to go out there and they're going to stay aggressive, pedal to the metal, and I expect nothing else here against East Tennessee State.
All right, let's get now to Clemson. This is, again, sort of a window where we have big spreads here. We actually do have a spread in this game there. Clemson coming off that game with LSU. They're going to be favored by 33.5 against Troy. So, again, 30-point favorites since 2020. And have they covered? The answer would be no, including some really big numbers against Citadel and Charleston Southern as well. So, Danny, when we're taking a look at this here with a total 51.5 and 33.5, they're looking to avoid Clemson its first 0-2 start since 1975.
Yeah, I didn't see this stat before I made my pick on this one. I got to do a little more research here and dive deep on those numbers, because the thing that I remember last year and not paying attention to a lot of the lines was after an abysmal performance against Georgia where Cade Klubnik had the deer in the headlight looks and it was ready to panic and the sky is falling around Clemson. What'd they do? They started absolutely shellacking every opponent on their schedule where they were the much better team. I think this one will be a very similar storyline. They've got some issues they need to figure out, primarily who's going to be running the football. The lack of the running game was massively worrisome for me as somebody who thought Clemson could be one of those teams that was going to win the ACC. I think they figure that out. The defense did a pretty good job. I know Garrett Nussmeier had a touchdown called off the board and they ended up losing the game, but I think that defense is what I feel most confident about. They've been criticized again for, the lack of, run support in the game against LSU. I think they step up. I think this team plays angry. I think Cade Klubnik, who has been accused of being a stat patter by our guy Tom Fornelli, call it what you want. I think this is a game that he puts up big numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and say Clemson wins big. I'll take the risk and lay them in this one.
Let's get sweaty, okay? We're going Troy team total under 9.5 because while I agree that the offense left a lot to be desired, I'm sorry. I think Garrett Nussmeier is one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and LSU only scored 17 points in that game. Defense played well enough for Clemson to win that football game and totally avoid all of these narratives. They just got nothing from their offense in the second half. So I think that the Tigers are ACC championship caliber and college football playoff caliber on the defensive side of the football. So let me go with that side that I trust. Gerard Parker, remember, Troy head coach, is somebody with a little bit of a background in terms of understanding these big-time games. It'll be a little bit of a challenge. It won't be easy. It'll be a sweat, but I think I'm going to ride the Tigers defense, Troy team total under.
Dan, let me get back to you because you're our quarterback here. We're talking about how Arch Manning played earlier in the day, and then Garrett Nussmeier and Cade Klubnik, those Heisman odds shortened, and then all of a sudden the fallout from that game. What do you need to see from Klubnik moving forward here as we're taking a look at his stats as a starter?
Unfortunately, what I need to see is not going to be what I see in this game. I mentioned before the big games. I mean, that really is where he has struggled against top-tier opponents. So I would expect him to play really well in this game. And so you're going to have to wait for them to get a quality opponent for me to see him step back up in that situation. Again, Tom Fornelli gave out some great stats for Cade Klubnik playing against top-tier competition. His numbers drop off significantly. And the thing that was most concerning with me was the look. I'm a big, when I watch games, yes, I watch development of the routes, and I watch to see the reads of the quarterbacks, but what I like to look for the most is sort of the look in the eyes. Where's your confidence level? Do you have sort of that fire in the belly, as Pete Prisco likes to call it? And I just saw Cade Klubnik kind of regress and go back a little bit to a younger, inexperienced quarterback who just looked like the moment was too big. His confidence was rattled. So for me, for Cade Klubnik, yes, I think he'll excel in these games, but the real question mark, which he's going to have to step up, is against the better teams that you play on that schedule. Do you rise to the occasion or do you shrink like you did against LSU in the big game?
All right, let's move on to now the betting favorite to win the Big 12, and that would be Utah, which comes in ranked 25th now, taking on Cal Poly. Chip, all of a sudden there's this Utah love. Everyone dipping into the futures to win the conference, make the CFP. One of our producers even took Utah to 100-1 to win the Natty here. What are we thinking about Utah this week?
Wow.
And they're still being disrespected, Tommy. I mean, they moved from about 28th in the AP voting only to 25th. Shows me voters did not watch how just surgical they were in pulling all the pieces of UCLA apart. They got one of the best offensive lines in the country, and now they've got a quarterback in Devin Dampier who can make teams pay. I said 42-3 was my official score prediction here, I believe. Yeah, and so I think that Utah, there is not enough love. To me, this is a top 15 caliber team, not just top 25. And I don't hate the Flyer to win it all because I would not be surprised if they show up to the Big 12 title game with 11 wins on the season.
I wouldn't either. And this was my mulligan play. I had Kansas State to win the Big 12. I would switch it right now to Utah. I'm buying into what they're cooking out there. You mentioned Dampier, who looked really comfortable in that system. Another popular move to bring a coordinator with you. Jason Beck comes from New Mexico with him. And what I like the most is that he cleaned up some of the interceptions, was very clean throwing the football. But maybe most impressively, and not many people saw this Utah team. Maybe that's why they didn't jump enough because the game kicked off at 11 p.m. But did anybody else notice that Nico was running for his life the entire night? 58% pressure rating against them. 58% of the time when he dropped back to pass, pass. They got pressure on them. If that's the case for UCLA, I think it'll be very similar in this one. I think it's a complete domination, and I do think Utah is the clear favorite in the Big 12. With all these teams evenly matched, I put Utah at the front of the line.
All right, we're going to talk Arizona State in just a little bit. Our last break here in the pick show, we're going to tackle some of those night games. It's a home stretch, and what about Miami now, ranked 5th in the country, hosting Bethune-Cookman at Hard Rock Stadium? All right, home stretch on HQ Spotlight with DK and Chip. All right, 12th ranked Arizona State at Mississippi State. This was sort of a home and home, which we saw the rematch where they beat the Bulldogs 30-23 in Tempe last season. First trip to Starkville for the Sun Devils here. 6.5 is the number. Chip, the home team catching points. A recipe for your play today?
Yeah, I mean, you've got cowbells. You've got a Mississippi State team that I think is feeling a little bit disrespected. Everyone was just ready to bury them in the SEC. And I saw, as they had to play on the road at Southern Miss in week 1, a good response after a bad start. They end up pulling away and winning handily. On the other hand, Arizona State against Northern Arizona was kind of able to just, the way a 7-year-old plays Madden, just run the same plays to the best players over and over again. When I see conference title contenders play an FCS team, I'd like to think of it as more of a workout. Spread the ball around, not rely on Sam Leavitt and Jordan Tyson as much as they did. So Arizona State maybe a little bit behind the development curve in terms of being as good as they're going to be this season. They got off to a slow start 1 year ago before catching fire and making the playoff. This is a tricky spot. I'll take Mississippi State in the points.
This is big for not only Arizona State, but for the Big 12. It hasn't been a great opening weekend. Baylor loses to Auburn. Colorado lost to Georgia Tech. This is a big opportunity for them with one of their favorites to win the conference on the road against a team which is supposed to be the worst. Can you imagine if the SEC gets the win here, how many SEC fans are going to say our worst beat one of your best, your Big 12 champ from last season? So I think there is some pressure on here. The number's a little bit tricky. I think that tells you that this could be a live dog situation. I'm not going to tackle one of the sides, though. I'm going to tackle the total because I think this is one of those games where you see a lot of points on the board. Jeff Lebby is a great offensive mind. We were talking about Josh Heupel earlier, somewhere he took a lot of his offensive concepts there to Starkville. Blake Shapen is a really good quarterback, and so is Sam Leavitt. Sam Leavitt really jumped off the board to me with the speed, which he showed on that 52-yard touchdown run. Chip, you mentioned the one-dimensional aspect of it. Jordan Tyson carries most of the workload. I'm concerned that offense is a little bit too Sam Leavitt and Jordan Tyson related, but they do have to figure out how to get some other pieces there. But I think they put up points. I think this is a higher scoring affair, so I'm going to go over the total.
Hail State and the over for our guys from the cover 3. Let's get to 5th-ranked Miami. They had that top 10 matchup, of course, with Notre Dame. They get to stay at Hard Rock. Bethune-Cookman comes into town. Daniel, throw it back at you. It was a lot like Ohio State when I said relatively let down in the sense of like you come off that high. How do you approach a game where you're going to be heavily favored against a lower team?
I could see that. I could see a little bit of a slow start coming out of the gates. I mean, the atmosphere in Miami was electric at Hard Rock Stadium. I don't think it's going to be quite the same for Bethune other than the band, which will be playing out there. So I just wonder how Miami responds. But ultimately, when they settle in, they have too much talent. I think Miami wins comfortably, and I do think there is some leadership on this team. They were so close, and they historically have played down to their opponents, but not this type of opponent. So I think it's a pretty lopsided affair. I think maybe a sluggish start. Ultimately, I've got Miami winning big here against Bethune.
Yeah, 450 yards allowed to FIU last week in Bethune's season opener. That tells you that Miami's going to be able to get almost anything and everything that they want. The conservative approach that Mario Cristobal took after they got a 21-7 lead midway through the third quarter has me shying away from putting a 50-burger on the board, but I still think this is an easy cruise of a win. I gave him 42-14.
All right, let's move on to South Carolina. They are in the top 10 for the first time since 2014. SC State there, Chip Patterson. Give me the Gamecocks handicap.
Yeah, I'm going to go, obviously, South Carolina. I'm going to go 38-10. And the key here for the Gamecocks is going to be to clean things up a little bit offensively because you're relying on Lenoris Sellers to be fantastic. And luckily, he and Nick Harbor are fantastic. But there is a lot of good work that can be done as they go into this. Remember, short rest as they played on Sunday, going up against South Carolina State, Vanderbilt on deck, Missouri after that. this is all going to be about the work. So I think that the focus is not on the scoreboard as much as it is making sure that you are not so reliant on your stars. I go 38-10, but no sweats for the Gamecocks.
Yeah, I had a similar 45-13. The defense looked great last week against Virginia Tech. I do think Lenore Sellers, this is a game, the one criticism he's taken is he needs to develop as a passer. I think this is that opportunity. I thought he looked comfortable. And you mentioned it, the emergence of Nick Harbor, who's always been a potential guy. He's got all this potential. Physically, he is a specimen to look at. To see him have those 3 big catches and a touchdown, I thought that was huge for them. But this is also a game where you've got the SEC schedule starting against Vanderbilt. You take out the starters, get them some rest. This is essentially sort of that preseason type of game for them. I think they win comfortably, get the starters out. I think it's an easy win for the Gamecocks.
All right, let's get to LSU by virtue of that big win against Clemson, 3rd in the country, handful of first-place votes. They got Louisiana Tech. We do have a spread in the mid to high 30s, Chip. But just in terms of the conversation with LSU, does that ranking seem too high, too low, or just right for you?
No, I mean, understanding that if you look at the national title odds, we've got about 7 teams that could all say we could finish the year holding the trophy on the last Monday night of the season. So how you rank those top 6 or so, I'll take an argument for almost any of them. And LSU, the reason why there is that push for them to be the best team in the country is because of what they have done defensively. Because it took a year. Blake Baker came in year 1, results were mixed. But the transfer portal additions, and remember, LSU did have one of the top-ranked transfer portal classes in the offseason. They've hit. And that is not something that's going to happen every single year. I love what they've got on the back end with Delane, what they've gotten up front, solidifying the defensive front. And, of course, Harold Perkins finally looking like he's got a role where he can live up to all that athletic potential. My pick for this game is just to go ahead and lay them. I think that Louisiana Tech is really at the bottom end of the FBS, really not even a contender in Conference USA. So I'm going to take LSU. I'm going to lay all these points. And it is because I do not trust Louisiana Tech to score against a LSU defense that has gotten worlds better from where they were in recent years.
Yeah, Blake Baker has done a phenomenal job with that defense. You mentioned the way they've been using Harold Perkins, comes up with that big pressure to force Cade Klubnik to throw it before he won. I was going to ask Chip what grade he would give LSU because Brian Kelly did not like the grade of 65 from Dabo Swinney. Clearly he gave his own team a 58, but he did point out that they did win the game and maybe he didn't want to watch the second half. I'm going to go tackle the over in this one because I do think this is one. Garrett Nussmeier, I think, is the best quarterback in the country right now, the way he's playing, and yet they didn't put up the point production that I think even they would like to see. I think this is sort of the get-right game for them, and I do wonder, LSU was specifically game planning for Clemson. Louisiana Tech, I don't think they're going to go out there and put up a ton of points, but I just wonder if this is a lethargic start. The defense maybe gets a trick play hit against them, but this is one where I think LSU rolls. And Tom, you asked about the ranking. I thought they should be number 1. I thought this was the best win of the weekend, going onto the road, playing against one of the better teams in the country, against a veteran quarterback to get that win. I thought it was the most impressive of week 1. I think they back it up here. I'm going to go over the total.
They won the Tiger Bowl. They won the Death Valley Bowl. They're back home on a Saturday night. You know how LSU is at night, so it's going to be interesting to see if they can continue to build upon what's been slow starts for Brian Kelly, but finally getting that season opening win. Last but not least, Alabama came into the week against Florida State ranked 8th, drops all the way to 21. Now, you get ULM Monroe. So, Danny, you were there, Doe Campbell. You saw it firsthand. Again, the question remains, can things be cleaned up? Can Alabama rebound? And if so, how do they do it this week?
Yes, I think the overreaction, I think it's expected. We see that after week 1. We see it from a fan base like Alabama where the standard was set so high by the coach that coached before, Kalen DeBoer, but I didn't think it was that awful. I thought Florida State just looked like the physically superior team, but this team has been questioned. They've been called out. I wonder if this is one of the easier weeks for Kalen DeBoer to motivate his team. If they're not motivated, then they have significant problems, but I think this is where they let out some of their frustrations. And I do think Ty Simpson is another quarterback who looked fine, but what is expected from a guy making his first start? They've got to get him more comfortable in that system. Ryan Williams knocked out of that game with a concussion, but I think this is where they try to get things clicking on all cylinders. We talked about Ryan Grubb coming back. That didn't really look like it mattered. The defense a little bit concerning, so I do think Louisiana Monroe could put up some points on this one. I think Alabama wins comfortably. I'm a little bit nervous of the big number, so I'm going to go over. I'm going to say that this is another game where the offense looks better and this is an offensive performance for Alabama. I'm going to go over the total of 50.5.
Yeah, I see it the same way as you, DK. I'm going to go over the total, but let me add one more wrinkle to this because I think Keelan Russell's going to get some real burn in this game, and I think that what they are going to do when Keelan Russell comes in the game is not just ask him to hand off. I think they are going to run the Alabama offense because we have hit a point where you've got to be really concerned about whether or not they've got the right guy in place. Sometimes a player can get outplayed in practice, but then not be able to live up to it in games. And sometimes a player, especially a younger player, might not necessarily be as crisp in practice, but once you get to live action, they are able to meet the moment better than somebody else in the quarterback room. So with a quarterback questions sort of hanging over the offense, I'm going to say that when the backups do come in, they're still going to be aggressive, and that helps us get over the total.
Spread will be 36.5 as of midweek here for Alabama. DK, Chip, guys, certainly appreciate it. One half of the Cover 3 podcast with Tom Fornelli and Bud Elliott. We also want to give a shout out to all of you watching our weekly picks show on YouTube. We heard you. Comments like, get those guys some chairs. Get them seated. We did it, and we'll see you again this time next week.